Welcome to my Channel Deep Sleep Mission-DSM. As we begin, I would be delighted if you could share your location in the comments below. It's truly inspiring to witness how far this content travels and to connect with viewers from across the world. The remote fell behind the couch cushions again, third time this week. As I reached down into that dark crevice where lost pennies and old popcorn kernels go to die, my fingers brushed against something cold, metallic, wrong. The texture made my skin crawl, like touching a dead battery that somehow still had a charge. When I pulled it out, I was holding a TV remote I'd never seen before. Sleek, black, no brand name, just a single button where the power button should be. And the strangest thing, it was already warm, like someone had just been holding it. If you're listening to this right now, lying in bed with your own remote somewhere nearby, maybe check where it came from. Because sometimes, the most ordinary objects in our homes aren't what they seem. Sometimes, they're doors. And once you press that button, well, let me tell you what happened when I pressed mine. The story begins now. My name is Sarah Chen, and I've lived alone in my Denver apartment for 3 years. Tuesday nights were sacred. My time to decompress after another soul-crushing day at the insurance office downtown. Wine. Takeout from the Thai place on Colfax. Whatever mindless show Netflix's algorithm decided I needed to see, that particular Tuesday in October started like any other. The autumn air had that perfect, crisp quality that made you want to burrow under blankets. I'd kicked off my heels, changed into my softest pajamas, the ones with the little sheep on them that my mom bought me last Christmas, and settled into my spot on the couch. The indent was perfectly Sarah-shaped after years of the same routine. I reached for the remote. My remote. The one with the slightly sticky volume button from that time I spilled orange juice on it, but it wasn't there. I patted around the coffee table. Nothing. Checked between the cushions. Just the usual archaeology of solo living. 3 hair ties. 67 cents and change. A fortune cookie fortune that said, "Your future holds a pleasant surprise." Yeah, right, that's when I felt it. Deep in the corner where the armrest meets the back cushion, my fingers found something smooth and cold. Too cold for something that had been sitting in my warm apartment. The remote I pulled out wasn't mine. It was heavier than a normal remote. Matte black with no logos, no model numbers. The buttons were arranged in a pattern I'd never seen before, concentric circles instead of the usual grid. In the center, where you'd expect the power button, was a single unmarked button that seemed to shimmer slightly, like oil on water. My first thought was practical. Maybe maintenance had been in my apartment while I was at work. The building manager, Mr. Rodriguez, had mentioned something about checking heating units, but he always left a note. Always. I turned the remote over in my hands. The back was smooth except for what looked like a serial number, but the digits kept shifting. Like those magic eyes pictures from the 90s that you had to stare at just right. I should have put it down. Should have taken it to Mr. Rodriguez. Should have done literally anything other than what I did next. But you know how it is when you're tired. When your brain is running on autopilot. When muscle memory takes over. I pointed it at my TV and pressed the button. The screen didn't turn on. Not exactly. Instead, it filled with static. Not the normal black and white snow you might remember from old analog TVs. This static had depth to it. Layers. Like looking through a window covered in rain, except the rain was falling upward and the window opened onto somewhere else. I pressed the button again. The static shifted. And for just a moment, less than a second, I could have sworn I saw a room. Not my living room. Someone else's. The glimpse was so brief I couldn't make out details. Just an impression of furniture arranged differently. Different colored walls. The rational part of my brain kicked in. Obviously, I was picking up someone else's signal. Maybe a neighbor had gotten some fancy new streaming device. These old buildings had terrible insulation. I could hear Mrs. Patterson's Yorkshire Terrier yapping through the walls most mornings. I pressed the channel up button. The static swirled, reformed. Another flash of image. This time, a kitchen. Vintage appliances, avocado green refrigerator. Nobody had owned an avocado green refrigerator since 1978. Channel up, static. A bedroom with wood paneling. Channel up, static. A basement with a single bulb swinging from the ceiling. Each image lasted just long enough for my brain to register it before dissolving back into that hypnotic static. And here's the thing that made my skin prickle. They all felt familiar. Not like I'd been in those rooms, but like I'd dreamed them. Like they were places assembled from half-remembered fragments of every house I'd ever visited as a child. I kept clicking, compulsively. The way you scroll through social media at 2 a.m, knowing you should stop but unable to look away. The rooms began to blur together. Living rooms with plastic-covered furniture. Dens with console TVs bigger than my refrigerator. Kitchens with linoleum floors and patterns that hurt to look at. And then I saw my grandmother's house. Not a house like my grandmother's. Her actual house. The one in Colorado Springs where I spent summers as a kid, the one that had been torn down 10 years ago to make room for a strip mall. But there it was on my TV. The living room with the green velvet couch, the painting of the deer that used to frighten me. The clock that chimed every 15 minutes until you wanted to throw it out the window. My hand shook as I pressed the button again. The static swirled, and the image stayed, not frozen. I could see dust motes floating in the afternoon sunlight, streaming through the lace curtains. The clock's second hand ticked steadily forward. Then I heard it. Faint, muffled, like someone calling from very far away. Sarah, my grandmother's voice. But my grandmother had been dead for 12 years. I dropped the remote. It hit the coffee table with a crack that sounded too loud in my suddenly silent apartment. The TV flickered once, twice, then went dark. My hands were shaking. My whole body was shaking. There was a logical explanation for this. There had to be. Stress from work, too much wine, not enough sleep. Some combination of exhaustion and suggestion creating auditory hallucinations. I picked up my phone to call someone, anyone, but who would I call? Hey, I found a weird remote and now I'm seeing my dead grandmother's house on TV? They'd think I'd lost it. Hell, I was starting to think I'd lost it. The remote lay on the coffee table, innocuous. Just black plastic and buttons. I could throw it away, pretend this never happened, go to bed and wake up tomorrow to my normal, boring life. But you know how it is with forbidden things. The more you tell yourself not to look, not to touch, not to engage, the stronger the pull becomes. I picked it up again. Heavier than before, or maybe that was my imagination. The central button seemed to pulse slightly under my thumb. Probably just my own heartbeat. This time, I pressed the channel button more deliberately. Static filled the screen, but I was ready for it. I watched the patterns, tried to make sense of them. There was a rhythm to it. The static would surge and recede like breathing, like something alive. A room materialized. Modern this time. An apartment that could have been in my building. White walls, IKEA furniture. Someone's laptop open on a dining table, the screen dark. I pressed the volume button. Silence at first. Then the hum of a refrigerator. The tick of a clock. The small living sounds of an empty space. I turned the volume up higher. Footsteps. Someone walking across the floor above. A door closing. Normal apartment sounds. Nothing sinister. Nothing wrong. Except the footsteps were getting closer. Not above. In the apartment on the screen. I could see the shadows shifting in the hallway leading to the living room. I wanted to change the channel. My thumb moved to the button, but I couldn't press it. Some part of me needed to see who would walk into that room. The footsteps stopped just outside the frame. I could see the edge of a shadow on the white wall. human-shaped, but stretched, wrong proportions. Too tall, too thin. The shadow moved. Whoever it was, they were turning toward the living room, toward the camera, toward me. I slammed the channel button. Static. Sweet, safe static. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. The next room was empty, a hotel room by the look of it. Generic art on the walls. Polyester bedspread in corporate beige. The kind of place traveling salespeople die in their sleep and nobody finds them for days. But something was off about this room, too. It took me a moment to realize what. The perspective. I wasn't looking at the room from where a TV would be. The angle was wrong. Too high. Like the camera, or whatever I was seeing through, was mounted in the corner where the walls met the ceiling. Like a security camera. I changed the channel faster now. Room after room flashed by. Some old, some new, some clearly from decades past. Others that might have been from yesterday or tomorrow. Time didn't seem to matter to whatever signal I was receiving. An office break room with a motivational poster about teamwork. A child's bedroom with toys I recognized from my own childhood. A hospital room with machines I couldn't identify. A basement with walls that seemed to breathe. And then my own living room. But not as it was now. This was my living room from a different angle, from the corner where my bookshelf stood. Looking back at my couch, at me, I turned around so fast I almost fell off the couch. Nothing there but my bookshelf. Old paperbacks and the succulent my mom insisted would be impossible to kill. It was halfway dead. On the screen, I watched myself turning around. A 2-second delay, like watching security footage of something that had just happened. The me on the screen turned back to face the TV. I watched her, me, raise the remote. I watched her face change from confusion to fear because there was someone standing behind the couch, behind her, behind me. I spun around again, nobody there, just my empty apartment with its familiar shadows. On the screen, the figure behind the couch leaned forward. I couldn't make out features, just darkness in a vaguely human shape. It reached out one impossibly long arm toward the Sarah on the screen. Toward me. I changed the channel, static. Then my grandmother's house again. This time, she was there, sitting in her green velvet chair knitting. The click-click-click of her needles was the most normal, comforting sound I'd ever heard. She looked exactly as I remembered. Gray hair pinned back, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. That soft cardigan she wore even in summer because she was always cold. "Sarah, honey, is that you?" She wasn't looking at the TV, wasn't looking at me. She was focused on her knitting, the yellow yarn pooling in her lap. "I've been waiting for you to visit," she said. "It's been so long." My throat felt thick. "Grandma?" Her hands stilled. Slowly, so slowly, she turned her head toward me, toward the camera. Her eyes were wrong. Not the warm brown I remembered. They were full of static, tiny points of black and white snow where her irises should have been. "You found it," she said, "the remote. I knew you would. You were always such a curious child." "This isn't real," I whispered. "Real is relative, sweetheart." She smiled, and it was her smile, even with those terrible eyes. What's real? The past, the present, the spaces in between. They're all just channels, Sarah. All just signals floating through the air, waiting for the right receiver. She set down her knitting and stood. Moved toward the camera with that shuffling gait I remembered from her final years. "Your mother never told you about the family gift, did she? Always so practical, your mother. So determined to live in just one world at a time." She was close to the camera now. I could see every line in her face, every age spot on her hands. "But you're like me, Sarah. You can see through the static. You can find the places that shouldn't exist anymore. The people who shouldn't exist anymore." She reached out, and for one impossible moment I felt her hand on my cheek. Cold, so cold. "The question is," she whispered, What are you going to do with it? The screen went black. I sat in the dark for a long time. The remote was hot in my hand, almost burning, but I couldn't let go. Wouldn't let go. My grandmother's words echoed in my head. The family gift, channels, signals. My mother had always been strange about her side of the family, deflecting questions, changing subjects. I knew my grandmother had been what people politely called eccentric in her later years, talking to people who weren't there, insisting the TV was showing her things that hadn't happened yet. We'd assumed it was dementia. Put her in a nice facility in Colorado Springs where they could keep an eye on her. She died there, alone, while I was in college halfway across the country, too busy with finals to visit. The guilt of that had never left me. I turned on my lamp. The normal yellow light felt like a betrayal after the silver glow of static. My apartment looked fake now, like a set, like one of those rooms I'd seen through the remote. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Thinking of you today. Love you. Today. Why today? I checked the date. October 23rd, the anniversary of my grandmother's death. Of course. I called my mother. It rang once, twice. Sarah, it's late, honey. Is everything okay? Her voice was normal. Concerned. Real. Mom, I need to ask you something about Grandma. Silence. Then a sigh. What about her? Did she ever mention anything about seeing things on TV? The pause was too long. When my mother spoke again, her voice was carefully controlled. Your grandmother had a lot of confused ideas near the end. This isn't about the end. This is about... I stopped. How could I explain? Did she ever have a remote? A black one? Different from normal? I heard my mother's sharp intake of breath. Where did you find it? Her voice was different now. Frightened. Mom. Sarah, listen to me. Whatever you found, put it back. Put it back and forget about it. You know what it is. I know what I spent my entire childhood trying to forget, she snapped. Then, softer, your grandmother. She could see things, other places, other times. She said it was a gift, but gifts don't make you wake up screaming. Gifts don't make you afraid to turn on your own television. She talked to me, I said, through the TV, just now. My mother made a sound I'd never heard from her before. Part sob, part laugh. Of course she did. She never could leave well enough alone, not even dead. Mom, do you want to know why we really put her in that facility? It wasn't the talking to invisible people. It was because she kept trying to go into the TV. Said there were places in the static where time didn't work right, where the dead weren't quite dead and the living weren't quite alive. She said she could visit your grandfather there, said she could change things that had already happened. My grandfather had died when I was 2. Car accident on I-25. Black ice. Nobody's fault. The night before she died, my mother continued, she called me. 3 a.m. Said she'd figured it out. How to cross over. How to stay in the static permanently. I thought it was just another delusion. What if it wasn't? Then God help us all. She hung up. I sat there holding my phone, the remote still burning in my other hand. 3 options lay before me. Put the remote back where I found it and pretend this never happened. Keep exploring. Risk seeing things that would fundamentally break my understanding of reality. Or, I thought about my grandmother. How she'd looked at me through the static. How she'd known I would find the remote. How she'd asked what I was going to do with it. I pressed the power button. The TV blazed to life. Static filled the screen, but it was different now. Organized. I could see patterns in it, pathways. Like looking at a map from very high up, I pressed channel up my apartment. But during the day, sunlight streaming through windows. A cat I didn't own sleeping on my couch. Channel up my apartment. But the walls were a different color. My furniture was gone, replaced by sleek pieces I didn't recognize. A man I'd never seen before was cooking in my kitchen, humming a song that hadn't been written yet. Channel up, my apartment. But older. The walls were wood paneling. The carpet was orange shag. A woman in a 1970s pantsuit was vacuuming, her back to the camera. I was seeing the same space across time, all the iterations of this apartment, all the lives lived within these walls, existing simultaneously in the static. Channel up, my apartment. But wrong. The angles didn't match. The walls bent in ways that hurt to look at. Something was moving in the shadows, something that had too many joints. Channel up. Darkness. Not the darkness of an unlit room, but the darkness of absence, of void, of spaces between channels where nothing should exist. But something was there. I could feel it watching me through the screen, waiting. Don't. The voice came from behind me. I turned. An old woman stood in my living room, not my grandmother, someone else. Her clothes were from another era, 1950s maybe. Her hair was perfectly set, her lipstick perfectly applied. She looked like she'd stepped out of a vintage advertisement. Except for her eyes. They were full of static. "You're new," she said. "Still have both feet in the living world. That's good, that's safe. Don't go into the dark channel, sweetheart. Some of us made that mistake. Some of us can't find our way back. Who are you?" "I lived here, 1954 to 1962. Died in that kitchen. Gas leak. Didn't even know I was dead until I saw my body on the 6 o'clock news." She laughed, a sound like static. "The remote showed up the next day, been channel surfing ever since." "You're trapped." "We're all trapped, honey, the living in their single timeline. The dead in the static, the in-between ones like your grandmother, trying to have it both ways." She moved closer and I could smell her perfume. Chanel No. 5, my grandmother's favorite. "She's building something in there, in the dark channels. Her and the others who figured out how to cross over without dying first. They think they can change things, rewrite the signals, edit the past. Is that possible?" The woman smiled sadly. "Everything's possible in the static, that's the problem. No rules, no boundaries. Just endless channels full of what was, what is, what might be. You could lose yourself in there, plenty have." She started to fade, becoming translucent. "Wait," I called. "How do I—" "You don't," she said firmly. "You put that remote down and you live your life in the channel you were born into. That's my advice, not that anyone ever takes it." She was gone. I was alone again. Just me and the remote, and the TV full of darkness that watched me with invisible eyes. I should have listened to her. Should have listened to my mother. Should have put the remote back and forgotten any of this ever happened. Instead, I did what I always do. What I'd done my whole life when faced with a door marked, "Do not enter." I opened it. I pointed the remote at the dark channel and pressed the volume button. Turned it up. Up. Static filled my ears. Not from the TV, from inside my head. The sound of every signal that had ever been broadcast, all playing at once. A cacophony of voices, music, commercials, news reports, all blending into white noise that threatened to drown out my own thoughts. The darkness on the screen began to move, to take shape, and I saw her. My grandmother, standing in a place that wasn't a place, surrounded by others like her. Men and women with static eyes, all working on something I couldn't quite see. Something vast and complex built from discarded signals and dead channels. She looked up, looked right at me, smiled. "I knew you'd come," she said, and her voice cut through the static like a knife. "We need you, Sarah. The living world won't listen to the dead, but you're still alive. You can be our bridge." Bridge to what? To fixing what went wrong. All the mistakes, all the regrets, all the things we should have said and didn't. All the people we lost too soon. Her static eyes seemed to burn brighter. "Your grandfather didn't have to die, Sarah. None of them did. We can change the channel, edit the broadcast, make it right." Behind her, the thing they were building came into focus. It looked like a remote, but massive, made of pure signal, crackling with the power of every broadcast that had ever been transmitted. "All we need," my grandmother said, reaching toward the screen, toward me, "is someone on the living side to press the button." The room temperature dropped 20 degrees. My breath came out in clouds. Ice crystals formed on the TV screen, spreading from the center outward like frozen veins. "Sarah," my grandmother's voice was different now. Urgent, desperate. "Please, we've been working so long. Building piece by piece every commercial jingle, every emergency broadcast, every whispered prayer sent out into the electromagnetic spectrum. We gathered them all, wove them together, created something that can reach back through the static and change the original transmission." I could see them all now. Dozens of figures standing in that non-place. Some looked recently dead, still wearing hospital gowns or the clothes they died in. Others were older, their forms fuzzy around the edges like overplayed VHS tapes. All of them staring at me with those terrible static eyes. "Think about it," my grandmother continued. "Every tragedy prevented. Every goodbye unsaid becoming a hello. Every ending rewritten. Isn't that worth any risk?" My hand holding the remote was numb. The cold was spreading up my arm, but I couldn't let go. The remote had fused to my palm, become part of me. "What happens to the world that exists now?" I asked through chattering teeth. "If you change the past, it becomes another channel," she said simply. "Still there, still viewable, but no longer the primary broadcast, no longer the one everyone's tuned into. And the people in it?" Her static eyes flickered. "They continue existing, somewhere in the static, like reruns that never stop playing." I thought about everyone I knew, my mother, my friends, my coworkers, my life, imperfect as it was. All of it relegated to some forgotten channel that no one would ever watch again. "I can't," I said. "You can't?" My grandmother's face twisted. "Do you know what it's like here? Watching the living make the same mistakes over and over? Seeing every tragedy that could be prevented play out in real time while we're powerless to interfere?" The figures behind her pressed closer to their side of the screen. I could make out details now. A young mother holding a baby that was too still. A teenager with rope burns around his neck. An old man clutching his chest. All the ways people die represented in that horrible crowd. "We're not asking to play God," my grandmother said. "We're asking for the chance to fix our own mistakes, to save the people we love. Your grandfather is here, Sarah. He's been waiting. Don't you want to meet him? Don't you want to grow up with him in your life?" I did. God help me, I did. The grandfather I'd never known, whose absence had shaped my family in ways we never discussed. The empty chair at every holiday. The stories that always began with, "Your grandfather would have loved, but..." "Show me," I said. "Show me what the world looks like if you change things." My grandmother smiled. The crowd behind her parted. The massive remote they'd built pulsed with power. The channel changed without me pressing anything. I saw a world where my grandfather lived, where he picked me up from school, where he taught me to fish, where my grandmother never went mad from grief and died alone in a facility. But I saw the ripples too. Because my grandfather lived, he was driving on a different road the day he would have died. The black ice that would have killed him killed someone else instead. A young father of 3. Those 3 children grew up broken in ways that spread outward like a virus. One became an addict, one became abusive, one simply gave up. The channel changed again. Every saved life cost another. Every prevented tragedy created a new one. The mathematics of existence were immutable. You couldn't add without subtracting. You couldn't save without sacrificing. It's not perfect, my grandmother admitted, but we can keep adjusting, keep editing. Eventually, we'll find the right balance. Eventually, I laughed, and it sounded hysterical even to my own ears. You're talking about turning reality into a rough draft, something you can endlessly revise. Yes. She leaned forward eagerly. Exactly. No more permanence, no more irreversible mistakes, just endless chances to get it right. The static in my head was getting louder. I could feel myself starting to drift, my edges becoming fuzzy, the boundary between me and the signal breaking down. "Sarah," my grandmother's voice cut through the noise. "You're running out of time. The longer you hold the remote, the more you become part of the broadcast. Soon you won't be able to let go. You'll be like us, trapped in the static. Is that what you want?" I looked down at my hand. I couldn't see where the remote ended and my flesh began. Black plastic and pale skin swirled together like static. "Let me help you," my grandmother said. "Press the button. Activate what we've built, then you can let go. You can return to your life. Your better life. The one where everyone you love is safe and whole." The button under my thumb pulsed. All I had to do was press down. One simple motion. Save everyone, fix everything. Edit reality until it was perfect, or at least try to. The woman from before, the one who died in my kitchen in 1962, materialized beside me. She looked more solid now, more real. Or maybe I was becoming less real. "Still time to choose," she said quietly. But not much. I looked at her, at my grandmother on the screen, at my hand that was no longer entirely my hand. "What would you do?" I asked the woman. She smiled sadly. "I did choose, honey, 60 years ago. I've been in the static ever since, watching people make the same choice. Some try to change things. Some accept them. Neither group seems particularly happy with their decision. That's not helpful. The truth rarely is." My grandmother was pressed against the screen now, her static eyes wide with desperation. "Sarah, please, please, don't abandon us. Don't abandon him. Your grandfather is right here. He wants to meet you. Don't you want that?" I did, but I also wanted a lot of things that weren't good for me. That's what being human meant. Wanting things that would destroy you. The remote pulsed. My vision filled with static. I was at the crossroads, the intersection between channels. I could feel all the possibilities spreading out before me. Every choice, every outcome, every world that could be. All I had to do was choose. I closed my eyes, thought about my real grandmother. Not this thing of static and desperation, but the woman who'd taught me to bake cookies, who'd read me stories, who'd loved imperfectly but truly. She wouldn't want this. The real her. She'd want me to live, to make mistakes, to have regrets, to be human. I made my choice. With every ounce of strength I had left, I threw the remote across the room. It hit the wall and shattered into 1,000 pieces of black plastic and impossible circuitry. The TV exploded in a shower of sparks and static. The woman beside me smiled and faded away. My grandmother's scream of rage and loss cut through the white noise before disappearing into silence. I collapsed on my couch, my hand burning with phantom pain. The apartment was dark, quiet, normal, except in the corner where the remote had shattered, something glinted. I crawled over, my legs too shaky to support me. Among the debris was a single button, the power button, intact, waiting. I picked it up. It was warm. I should have thrown it away, flushed it down the toilet, burned it. Anything to ensure it could never be part of a remote again. Instead, I put it in my jewelry box, the one my grandmother had given me, and there it sits to this day. A reminder, a temptation, a possibility. Because here's the thing about choices. You don't just make them once, you make them every day. Every hour, every time you open that jewelry box and see that button gleaming like a dark promise. Sometimes, late at night, I catch myself looking at old remote controls on eBay, wondering if any of them are missing a power button. Wondering if I could, but I don't. I won't. I chose this world, with all its pain and imperfection. I chose to let the dead stay dead and the past stay past. Most days, I believe I made the right choice. Most days. But if you're listening to this, if you've ever found something that shouldn't exist, that offers you everything you've ever wanted, what would you choose? And more importantly, could you keep choosing it? Every day? Forever? The static is always there, just beneath the surface, in the white noise between stations, in the hum of electronics, in the spaces between thoughts, waiting. All it takes is the right remote, the right button, the right moment of weakness. So check your remotes carefully, count the buttons, make sure they're all accounted for. Because somewhere out there, in the static between channels, they're still building, still trying, still looking for their bridge back to the world of the living. And some nights, when the TV turns on by itself and fills with static, I swear I can still hear my grandmother calling my name, still asking me to reconsider, still waiting for me to press that button. Sweet dreams. And maybe keep your TV unplugged tonight, just in case. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to hear more stories about the things that hide in plain sight. And if you've ever found something that shouldn't exist, something that changed your understanding of reality, leave a comment below. But be careful what you share. Some doors, once opened, can never really be closed. Some channels, once found, can never really be forgotten. And some gifts run in the family. Story number 2. The screen still glows. I know how that sounds. Trust me. I've spent the last 3 weeks trying to convince myself I imagined it. But every night when I close my eyes, I see that impossible light flickering across 60 years of rust and decay, and I hear them. The voices that shouldn't exist anymore. My name's Marcus, and if you're listening to this at night, maybe turn on a light. What I'm about to tell you happened just outside Cedar Rapids, Iowa. You might even know the place. The old Starlight Drive-In on Route 30, the one they shut down in 1976. The one where 17 people disappeared during the final showing. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before I tell you what really happens there, before I explain why I'll never sleep with my curtains open again, I need you to understand something. Some places don't stay abandoned, they just wait. And sometimes they remember. If you think you know this story, if you think it's just another urban legend about teenagers and a creepy old theater, stay with me. Because what I discovered that night will make you question every abandoned place you've ever driven past. Every story you've ever dismissed. Hit that subscribe button if you dare. But more importantly, listen carefully. Because by the end of this, you'll understand why some mysteries are better left unsolved. The story begins now. 3 weeks ago, I was just another journalism student at the University of Iowa, desperate for a story that would make my professor notice me. You know the type. Ambitious, naive, convinced I was going to change the world with my investigative reporting. My roommate Tyler had mentioned the Starlight during a late-night study session. My grandpa used to go there as a kid, he'd said, not looking up from his laptop. Says they found cars in the parking lot the morning after it closed. 17 of them. Keys still in the ignition. Popcorn still warm in the containers. But the people, gone. I'd laughed it off. Small town legend, I thought. Every community has one. The haunted house, the cursed cemetery, the abandoned whatever. But something about the way Tyler said it, the way his voice dropped when he mentioned the warm popcorn, it stuck with me. The next day I started digging. The university library had old newspapers on microfiche. Remember those? Hours of scrolling through grainy text until my eyes burned. But I found it. June 15th, 1976. The Cedar Rapids Gazette, 17 missing after drive-in's final show. The article was frustratingly vague. Police chief quoted as saying, "Investigation ongoing." Families concerned but hopeful. No bodies found, no signs of struggle, just nothing. I kept searching. Found a follow-up from a week later, then a month. The FBI had gotten involved. Search dogs brought in from Des Moines. They dragged the pond behind the theater, Checked every abandoned barn in a 50-mile radius. Nothing. But here's where it gets interesting, and why I should have stopped digging. In the October 1976 edition, buried on page 8, I found a small article. Starlight property sold to developer. Normal enough, right? Except the developer. Harriman Holdings. Never did anything with the land. No mall, no subdivision, nothing. I searched for Harriman Holdings. The company existed for exactly 6 months. Bought the drive-in, then dissolved. No other properties. No other transactions. Like it existed just to buy that land. And make sure no one else could. That's when I knew I had my story. Getting to the Starlight wasn't hard. Route 30 runs straight through Iowa like a scar. I borrowed Tyler's beat-up Honda Civic. Told him I was visiting family. The lie came easier than it should have. I left at 4 in the afternoon, figuring I'd get there before dark, take some photos, maybe record some atmospheric audio for my podcast pitch. The October sun was already starting to sink, painting the cornfields that endless Iowa gold that makes you understand why they call it Heartland. The GPS kept trying to reroute me. Connection lost, it would say, then find itself again. I didn't think much of it. Rural Iowa isn't exactly known for its cell towers. But as I got closer to where the Starlight should be, something strange happened. The radio started picking up a station I'd never heard before. KSTR 1450 AM. The DJ's voice was smooth, professional, but something about it felt off. And that was Love Me Tender by Elvis Presley. Coming up next, we've got a special treat for all you lovers out there at the Starlight tonight. But first, let me remind you that concessions close in 15 minutes. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. The Starlight had been closed for 47 years. KSTR, K-Star, K-Starlight. I reached for the dial, tried to change the station. Static on every channel except 1450. So grab your sweetheart's hand and that last box of popcorn. The feature presentation starts at dusk. I should have turned around. Every instinct I developed in 22 years of life was screaming at me to turn around. But journalists don't turn around. We push forward. We find the truth. God, I was an idiot. The sun was touching the horizon when I finally saw it. The sign rose out of the overgrowth like the skeleton of some ancient beast. Starlight Drive-In. In letters that had once been neon, now just twisted metal in memory. The S hung at an angle that made it look like a question mark. I pulled into what had been the entrance. The ticket booth was still there, windows long since shattered, roof caved in on one side. Vines had claimed most of it, but I could still see the price board. Adults, $1.25, children, 50C, carload, special, $5. The parking area stretched out before me. Rows and rows of humps where the speakers' posts had been, like graves in formation. The screen loomed at the far end, a massive rectangle of white that shouldn't have been white anymore. Not after 47 years of Midwest weather. But it was. Pristine white. Like it had been painted yesterday. I parked in the back row. Habit from actual drive-ins, I guess. Always park where you can leave quickly. I grabbed my camera, my phone, my little digital recorder, professional equipment for a professional story. The sun disappeared behind the corn as I stepped out of the car. And that's when I heard it. Faint. So faint I almost convinced myself it was wind. The sound of hundreds of car engines. Idling. You know that feeling when your brain tries to rationalize something impossible? That's what happened as I stood there in that empty lot, listening to engines that didn't exist. Whined through the corn, I told myself, old pipes in the ground, echoes from the highway. But I knew, deep down, I already knew. I forced myself to walk forward, past the first row of speaker posts, past the second. The sound grew louder. Not just engines now. Music. That same smooth DJ voice from my car radio, but now coming from everywhere and nowhere. Folks, we've got a real treat tonight. Our final showing here at the Starlight. Management wants to thank each and every one of you for 10 wonderful years. My phone was in my hand recording everything. The screen showed 7:47 p.m., October 15th, 2023, but the timestamp kept flickering. For just a second, I swear it showed June 15th, 1976. I reached the projection booth, or what was left of it. A concrete block building, graffiti-covered, roof partially collapsed. The door hung open, darkness beyond. I should have gone in. That's what a real journalist would do. Instead, I circled around to the back. That's where I found the first car, a 1974 Plymouth Duster, powder blue, parked neatly between two speaker posts. It shouldn't have been there. The lot had been empty when I pulled in, I was sure of it, but there it sat, looking like it had just rolled off the assembly line. I approached slowly, peered through the driver's side window. The keys were in the ignition. A box of popcorn sat on the dashboard, still warm. I could see the steam fogging the inside of the windshield. My hands were shaking as I tried the door handle. Locked. Of course it was locked. But through the window I could see more, a man's jacket draped over the passenger seat, a woman's purse on the floor, a teddy bear in the back, the kind a child might bring to a long movie. I stumbled backward and realized the lot wasn't empty anymore. They were everywhere. Dozens of cars, all from the 70s. All parked perfectly, all empty. I spun in a circle, my phone capturing it all, though the screen kept glitching, showing 2 times at once. And then the screen lit up. Not gradually, not with the flicker of an old projector warming up. Just on. Brilliant white light that made me shield my eyes. When I looked again, images were forming. Credits rolling. The Columbia Pictures logo from 1976. I ran, not back to my car, that would have been smart. No, I ran toward the projection booth. Had to know what was creating this, had to find the logical explanation. The booth was exactly what you'd expect. Broken equipment, rusted film canisters, graffiti spanning decades. Tommy plus Lisa Cooey, 82, class of 99 was here. Urban Exploration 2015. Normal abandoned building stuff, except for the projector. It sat in the center of the room, pristine, running. Reels spinning, light blazing through the tiny window toward the screen. No power cord, no film in the reels. Just light and motion and impossibility. I reached out, God help me, I actually reached out to touch it. That's when I heard the voices. Not from outside, from the projector itself. Hundreds of voices all talking at once, laughing, whispering, crying. Mommy, I can't see. Pass the popcorn, honey. This is our last night before... Don't let go of my hand. Why is it so cold? I jerked my hand back, but it was too late. I'd made contact. And in that moment, I understood. The projector wasn't showing a movie, it was showing a memory. The same memory playing over and over for 47 years. The last night, the final showing. But memories can trap you if you're not careful. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in an instant. My breath came out in clouds. Frost spread across the booth windows like reaching fingers. And outside, the lot was full. But before I tell you about my escape, before I explain how I got out of there alive, I need to tell you what I found in the projection booth. Because hidden beneath decades of debris, I discovered something that changed everything. A journal. Leather-bound, wrapped in plastic. The first page read, Property of Harold Wickman, Projectionist, Starlight Drive-In. Harold had been there that last night. And he'd written it all down. June 14th, 1976. Something's wrong with the film reels. Company sent the wrong movie again. 3rd time this month. Label says it's The Omen, but when I threaded it up for the test run, it was something else. No title, no credits, just footage. Looked like someone filming the drive-in itself, from the cornfield, late at night. You can see cars in the lot, but we've been closed for 3 days for maintenance. I should report this, but Mr. Garrison says we're losing money. Can't afford another delayed showing. Maybe I'm overthinking it. June 15th, 1976. Afternoon set up for tonight, our last show. Still have that weird reel, but I put it aside. We'll run the double feature as advertised. The Omen and Carrie. Fitting end, I suppose. Sarah's bringing the kids tonight. Been promising them all summer. Figure it's now or never. June 15th, 1976. 7:45 p.m. lots packed. 142 cars. Biggest crowd we've had all year. Everyone wants to say goodbye to the old place, I guess. But something's off. That reel I set aside, it's in the projector. I know I loaded The Omen. I've been doing this for 9 years. I don't make mistakes like that. And the film. Christ, the film. It's not the same footage from before. It's showing tonight, right now. I can see myself in the booth writing this. How's that possible? 8:15 p.m. I tried to stop the projector. Won't shut off. Pulled the power. It kept running. The audience doesn't seem to notice anything wrong. They're all just watching. The film is showing things that haven't happened yet. I can see the clock in the footage. It reads 11:47 p.m. What happens at 11:47? 8:47 p.m. Sarah brought me dinner. Hot dog and popcorn. Couldn't eat. She asked why I looked scared. Couldn't tell her. She thinks I'm being dramatic about the drive-in closing. The film, it's showing the cornfield now. Something moving between the rows. Something tall, too tall. And it's getting closer to the drive-in in the footage. I need to warn everyone. But warn them about what? A movie that shows the future? They'll think I've lost it. 9:30 p.m. Tried calling the police. Phone's dead. Tried leaving the booth. Door won't open. Not stuck, just won't. Like the handle doesn't exist anymore. The thing in the cornfield is at the fence now, in the movie. But when I look out the window at the real fence, nothing. Yet, God help us all. 10:45 p.m. I understand now. The film isn't showing the future. It's creating it. Every frame that passes locks us deeper into its timeline. And at 11:47, I can see it clearly now, what happens. The thing from the cornfield doesn't climb the fence. It doesn't need to, because it's already here. It's been here all along. It's in the light. The projector light. When that light hits you, really hits you, you become part of the show. Forever. 11:15 p.m. last entry. If anyone finds this, don't watch the film. Don't even look at the light. It's almost time. I can hear them outside. Not screaming. Laughing. Like they're enjoying the show. But their laughs are getting slower, stretched, like a record playing at the wrong speed. Sarah, kids. I'm sorry. I should have shut it all down. Should have. The light is so bright now. So beautiful. Maybe it won't be so bad. Maybe we'll all just watch movies forever. Isn't that what we wanted anyway? One more show. One last perfect night at the drive-in. Forever. I stood there in that booth, 47 years later, reading a dead man's words while phantom cars filled the lot outside. The journal slipped from my numb fingers, pages scattering across the floor. And that's when I saw what Harold had hidden beneath it. Film canisters. Dozens of them, all labeled with dates. Not movie titles. Dates: June 15th, 1977, June 15th, 1978, June 15th, 1979, all the way to June 15th, 2023. This year, this fucking year, and one more, unlabeled, waiting. I grabbed the 2023 canister with shaking hands. Pried it open. The film inside looked fresh, like it had just been developed. I held a strip up to the projector's light. It showed a young man. Brown hair, University of Iowa sweatshirt. standing in a projection booth, holding a strip of film up to the light. It was me. Right now, this exact moment. And in the background of the frame, visible through the booth window, a figure stood in the cornfield. Tall, so impossibly tall, moving between the rows with jerky, frame-by-frame motion, like a film running at the wrong speed, getting closer. Not just cars now. People. Translucent figures walking between the vehicles, carrying concessions, children on their shoulders. A teenager in a Letterman jacket helped his girlfriend from a Camaro. A family of 5 squeezed into a station wagon, arguing good-naturedly about who forgot the blanket. They looked happy, normal, except for their eyes. When they turned those empty, hollow sockets toward the projection booth, toward me, I understood what had happened here. Why they never found the bodies, why Harriman Holdings bought the land just to abandon it. They never left, but they weren't ghosts. Not exactly. They were something worse. They were recordings, living film strips, playing out their roles in an endless loop. And every year, the film needed new footage, new cast members, new victims who stayed past closing time. I dropped the film strip, backed away from the projector. But the damage was done. I'd seen myself in the film. I was already part of the show. Outside, the phantom audience had noticed me. They turned in their cars, empty sockets fixed on the projection booth. A little girl in pigtails waved. Her hand moved in stuttering, frame-by-frame jerks. Her smile stretched too wide, held too long, like a freeze frame of joy that had curdled into something else. The projector's reels spun faster. The voices from the machine grew louder, more insistent. He's seen the truth. Make him understand. One more for the collection. The show must go on. I had to think. Harold's journal said the thing came from the cornfield at 11:47. My phone showed 11:23. 24 minutes. But wait, if the film created the future, locked people into its timeline, then maybe I grabbed the unlabeled canister, the empty one. If I could change the film, create a different ending. But with what? I had no camera, no way to make new footage unless my phone. Stupid, modern phone with its stupid modern camera. I set it to record, propped it on a shelf facing the door. Then I did the only thing I could think of. I ran the empty reel through the projector. The machine screamed. Not mechanically. It actually screamed, like something alive and in pain. The phantom audience outside flickered, their forms wavering. The little girl's wave stuttered, caught between frames. I kept filming myself loading blank film, filming nothing, filming a future that hadn't been written yet. 11:35 p.m. The cornfield rustled. Even from inside the booth I could hear it, like a wind through the stalks, except the air was perfectly still. The ghosts in their cars turned to look, movements synchronizing, all facing the same direction, all waiting. 11:40 p.m. It emerged from the corn. I only caught a glimpse through the window, but that was enough. It moved wrong, like it existed between the frames of reality, only visible in the flicker between moments. Tall enough to step over the fence, thin enough to slip between spaces, dressed like an old-time projectionist. But wrong, everything wrong. The uniform from every decade at once, the face a composite of features shifting like channels on a broken TV. Harold Wickman, but also not. Also, everyone who'd ever run a projector, ever loved the movies, ever stayed too late at the show. 11:43 p.m. It was at the fence. The phantom audience applauded. A sound like rustling film strips. My phone kept recording. The blank reel kept spinning. The projector kept screaming. I understood then. The thing wasn't coming for me. It was coming for the projector, to change the reels, to play the next year's film, to collect whoever had been marked. 11:45 p.m. I made a decision. Probably stupid, definitely desperate, I grabbed the film canisters. All of them. 47 years of June 15th. 47 years of collected souls. And I started pulling out the film, all of it. Yards and yards of cellulose memories spooling onto the floor. The thing at the fence stopped, turned. Even from across the lot, I felt its attention like cold fingers on my spine. 11:46 p.m. I lit a match. I don't smoke, but I had matches. Don't ask me why. Sometimes stories need fire, and fire needs a beginning. The film went up like gasoline. 47 years of loops burning at once. The phantom audience screamed. Not in pain, but in relief. The cars flickered, faded. The people dissolved like smoke. The thing by the fence moved, fast, frame, skip fast. One moment at the fence, the next halfway across the lot, but it was already too late. 11:47 p.m. The projector died, just stopped. No power down, no grinding halt, simply ceased. The light went out, the screaming ended. And for one perfect moment, the Starlight Drive-In was just an abandoned lot again. Then the booth door exploded inward. It stood there, filling the doorframe. The projectionist thing. Harold, but not Harold. It looked at the burning film, the dead projector, the empty reel still threading through the mechanism. "You've ruined the show," it said. The voice came from everywhere. From the walls, from the smoke, from my own bones. 47 years of perfect screenings, 47 years of preservation, and you burned it all. I held up my phone, still recording. "I made a new film," I said. My voice shook but didn't break. A film where nobody stays, where everybody leaves, where the show finally ends. It tilted its head. The movement was wrong, too far, like a bird or a broken doll. Films can be remade, shows can be rerun. The starlight is eternal. Not anymore. I pointed to the melted projector. No projector, no film, no audience. Just an empty lot and a bad memory. It laughed. The sound was like film running backwards. "You think you're the first to try? Others have burned the film, destroyed the projectors, but we always come back. The show always goes on." That's when I noticed something. My phone's screen. Still recording, but the timestamp had stopped moving. Frozen at 11 hours, 47 minutes, and 33 seconds. We were in a frame, a single frozen frame of time. "You can't leave," it said, stepping into the booth. No one leaves after 11:47. That's when the show ends. That's when the loop resets. That's when you collect your payment, I finished. 1 soul per year, to keep the whole thing running. To keep you fed, powered, I don't know what you are. "I am the last projectionist," it said. "The eternal keeper of the eternal show. I am every person who ever loved the movies so much they couldn't leave. Couldn't let the magic die. Even when it killed them." It reached for me. The hand was multiple hands overlapping. Harold's hand, other hands. Too many joints. Too many fingers. "But I had one more card to play, the film in my phone," I said quickly. "It's uploading, to the cloud, to everywhere. The whole world will see what happens here. The mystery will be solved. And once everyone knows, once there's no more mystery, what happens to you?" It paused. The multiple faces shifted, showed confusion. Fear. "You're lying." I turned the phone around. Showed the upload progress bar, 87% complete, thank God for 5G towers and good timing. In about 30 seconds, this video goes live. Every social media platform, every news outlet I could tag, everyone will know about the starlight, about you, about what really happens here. They won't believe it. Doesn't matter. They'll come. Ghost hunters, urban explorers, developers. This place won't be forgotten anymore. It'll be famous, documented, explained, and you'll just be another special effect, another ARG, another creepypasta for Reddit. 92% uploaded. The thing writhed. multiple forms fighting for control. Harold's face surfaced, clear for just a moment. "Please," Harold's voice said. "I just wanted to save the drive-in. I just wanted one more summer. One more show." "I know," I said. "But it's been 47 years. Time to roll credits." 95% uploaded. The timestamp on my phone clicked forward. 11 hours, 47 minutes, and 34 seconds. Time resuming, the spell breaking. The projectionist thing let out a sound like tearing film. It collapsed, forms separating. Harold, others, all the projectionists who'd fed the machine, who'd become the machine. They looked at me with eyes that were suddenly, horribly human. "Thank you," Harold whispered. Then they were gone. Dissolved like silver nitrate in the morning sun, 100% uploaded. I ran, out of the booth, across the empty lot, past the rusted speaker posts. The starlight was dark, dead. Finally, truly abandoned. I made it to my car, started it on the first try, drove away without looking back. But I heard it. One last time. From the radio, from the air, from nowhere. That concludes the final showing at the Starlight Drive-In. Thank you for letting us go. Static, then nothing. Just the sound of Iowa wind through the corn. It's been 3 weeks now. 3 weeks of normal life. Classes, homework, parties I don't go to because I can't stand crowds anymore. Tyler got his car back. Never asked why there were 17 Pine air fresheners hanging from the mirror, all trying to mask the smell of popcorn that won't go away. The video went viral, of course. 12 million views in the first week. College students' terrifying night at abandoned drive-in, the headline said. Most people called it fake, special effects, CGI. Another found footage horror project. But some believed, some always believe. The comment section became its own kind of ghost story. People sharing their experiences, other abandoned places, other loops they'd stumbled into and barely escaped. A woman in Maine talked about a defunct amusement park where the carousel still plays music at midnight. A man from Oregon described a closed hotel where check-in never ends. They found patterns. Always places of joy turned sour. Always somewhere people gathered to forget their troubles. Always a keeper. Someone who loved the place too much to let it die. I never wrote the story for class. Told my professor I couldn't find enough information. She gave me a disappointed look. Suggested I try harder next time. If only she knew. But the strangest part, the emails started coming a week after I posted the video. The first was from a woman in Texas. My grandfather was Harold Wickman, it said. He disappeared in 1976. Thank you for letting me know what happened to him. Then more. Families of the 17. They'd found my video, recognized names I'd mumbled while filming, seen familiar cars in the background. 47 years of not knowing, and suddenly closure. One stood out. Sarah Wickman, Harold's wife, 93 years old now, living in a retirement home in Des Moines. She wanted to meet. I almost didn't go. What do you tell someone who's waited 47 years for answers? How do you explain that their loved one became part of something impossible? But I went. Sarah was smaller than I expected. Fragile. But her eyes were sharp, clear. She held my hand with surprising strength while I told her everything. Harold's journal, the film, the thing he became. How he'd thanked me at the end. When I finished, she smiled. He always loved that place, she said. Loved the movies. The magic of it all. Said every film was a doorway to somewhere else. She squeezed my hand tighter. I'm glad he found his door, even if it took 47 years to walk through it. She gave me something before I left. A photo. Harold in his projectionist uniform, standing proud in front of the Starlight sign. Young, human, happy, for your collection, she said. Everyone should remember the good times before the endings. I keep that photo on my desk now, a reminder. Not all ghosts are monsters. Sometimes they're just people who loved something too much to let go, who got stuck in their own perfect moment and couldn't find the way out. But here's the thing that keeps me awake at night, the thing I didn't put in the video. Remember those film canisters, the ones I burned? I kept one. Don't ask me why. Journalist instinct maybe, evidence, proof that it really happened. June 15th, 2019. I developed the film last week. Had to find someone who still worked with actual film. Harder than you'd think, but I found a guy, old-timer who ran a photo shop that still did analog. The pictures were exactly what I expected. Cars in a drive-in lot. People watching a movie, nothing special. Except, in the corner of one frame, barely visible, a modern car, a Honda Civic with a University of Iowa parking sticker. My roommate's car, but I hadn't borrowed it until this year, until 2023, which means I've been checking the newspapers, local ones, every day, looking for patterns. And 3 days ago I found it, small article buried on page 6, developer plans revival of historic drive-in. Harriman Holdings, reformed after 47 years, has announced plans to restore and reopen the Starlight Drive-In. Grand reopening scheduled for June 15th, 2024. I called the reporter who wrote the article. Asked about Harriman Holdings. Who owned it? Who was behind the revival? He laughed. Funny thing, he said. Company documents list the CEO as M. Johnson, but no one's actually met them. All communication goes through lawyers. Very mysterious. M. Johnson. Marcus Johnson. My name, I never incorporated a company, never bought land, never made any plans to restore anything. But somewhere, in some timeline, in some version of the film that didn't burn, I did, or I will, or I am right now. The Starlight isn't done with me. The loop isn't broken. It's just evolved. Found a new way to sustain itself. Not through ghost projectionists or phantom audiences, but through something worse. Through people like me. People who can't let go of the story. Who keep checking the newspapers. Who keep the legend alive by telling it. Who feed the mystery by trying to solve it. Every view of my video, every comment, every share, every person who drives out to Route 30 to see for themselves, we're all keeping it alive. We're the new audience, the new loop, and the worst part, I can't stop. I check the Harriman Holdings website every day, watch the construction updates, see the new screen going up, pristine and white. Watch the countdown timer to the grand reopening. 187 days remaining. Part of me wants to warn people. Post another video, tell them to stay away. But I know how that story ends. The warnings become part of the legend. The legend draws more people. The cycle continues. Part of me wants to go back. June 15th, 2024. Be there for the reopening. See what crawls out of the cornfield this time. What new projectionist will emerge to run the eternal show. But mostly, I just want to forget. To pretend it was all a hoax. CGI and clever editing. To believe the commenters who dissect my video frame by frame, finding the mistakes and evidence of fabrication. Except, late at night when I can't sleep, I still hear it. That radio station that shouldn't exist. KSTR 1450 AM. The smooth DJ voice cutting through the static. Coming up next, we've got a special treat for all you folks heading out to the new Starlight. That's right, the rumors are true. We're coming back. Bigger, better, with all the modern amenities and that classic drive-in charm. I've stopped trying to change the station. Some shows never end. They just wait for their next season, their revival, their reboot. And sometimes the audience becomes part of the cast. I thought I was investigating a ghost story. Turns out I was auditioning for a role, and I got the part. See you June 15th, 2024. We've got such wonderful things to show you. So that's my story. That's what really happens at the abandoned drive-in theater. Or what happened, or what's going to happen. Time gets funny when you're dealing with loops, and if you don't believe me, if you think this is just another creepypasta, another viral marketing campaign for the Starlight's grand reopening, well, check the website, harrimanholdings.com. Look at the CEO's signature on the announcement page, M. Johnson. Look at the date. Posted 3 years before I was born. The Starlight Drive-In closed in 1976. It's reopening in 2024, and somewhere in between, in the spaces between frames, it never stopped showing movies. It just learned to be patient, to evolve, to use new technology to tell old stories. So if you're watching this late at night, if you're lying in bed wondering what's real and what's not, ask yourself something. How did you find this video? Did you search for it? Did the algorithm suggest it? Or did it find you the way the Starlight found me? Another perfect audience member for the eternal show. Check your history, check your subscriptions. See how many abandoned place videos you've watched lately, how many ghost stories, how many mysteries. We're all in the drive-in now, all watching the same screen, all part of the same loop. The only difference is some of us know it, and some of us are still enjoying the show. Leave a comment if you've had your own encounter. Share this video if you want others to know the truth. Subscribe if you dare to follow my journey back to the Starlight. Because I am going back. Already bought my ticket. June 15th, 2024. Opening night. Can't miss it. Wouldn't miss it. The compulsion is too strong now. The show must go on, and every show needs its audience. See you at the Starlight. See you in the loop. See you in the spaces between the frames, where the real movie never stops playing. Sweet dreams, if you can still have them. Story number 3. The first word I lost was butterfly. I know that sounds ridiculous. How does someone just lose a word? But I swear to you, sitting here in my apartment in Milwaukee, staring at the snow falling outside my window, I can't remember what we call those orange and black insects that migrate through Wisconsin every fall. I know the English word, obviously. But the word from my childhood, the one my grandmother whispered when she tucked me in at night, it's gone. Like someone reached into my brain with tweezers and plucked it out. And I need you to understand something before I tell you what happened next. This isn't about getting older or being too Americanized or any of those simple explanations people love to throw around. This is about something else entirely. Something that started 3 weeks ago when I downloaded that language app. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me ask you something first. And I want you to really think about this. What if the words you speak aren't just sounds? What if they're pieces of you, fragments of your soul that you trade away every time you open your mouth? And what if something out there is collecting them? Still with me? Good. Because once you hear what happened to me, you might want to check which words you still remember. You might want to write them down before it's too late. The story begins now. My name is Elena Kowalski, and 3 weeks ago I could speak perfect Polish. My babcia, my grandmother, made sure of that. Even after we moved from Chicago's Polish village to Milwaukee when I was 12, she insisted we speak Polish at home. English is for outside, she'd say, wagging her finger. But in this house, we remember who we are. I kept that promise even after she passed last year. Every morning, I'd make my coffee and whisper Dzień dobry to her photo on the mantel. Every night, Dobranoc, babciu. The words felt like a warm blanket, connecting me to something bigger than my corporate job at the insurance firm downtown. Then came the dreams. It started subtle. I'd wake up at 3:17 a.m., always 3:17, I don't know why, with this feeling like I'd forgotten something important. You know that sensation when a word is on the tip of your tongue but won't come. It was like that, but worse. Like the word wasn't just hiding, it was missing. The first time, I brushed it off. Stress from the Peterson account at work. Too much caffeine, not enough sleep, the usual suspects. But then it happened again the next night. And the next. Always 317. Always that same hollow feeling, like something had been scooped out of my brain with a melon baller. On the fourth night, I decided to test myself. I sat up in bed, turned on the lamp, and started reciting childhood songs my babcia taught me. Ulazo kotek na plotek. I began, then stopped. What came next? The words that had lived in my mouth since I was 3 years old. They felt slippery, faded, like trying to read text through frosted glass. That's when I noticed my phone glowing on the nightstand. A notification from that language learning app I downloaded the week before. Duolang Plus. Not the OWL one everyone uses. This was something I'd found through a Reddit recommendation. Learn any language in your sleep, the ad had promised. Revolutionary subliminal technology. I'd been skeptical, but the reviews were incredible. 5 stars across the board. People claiming they'd become fluent in Mandarin in 3 weeks, Arabic in a month. The app was free for the first week, so I figured, why not? I'd been wanting to brush up on my Spanish for that promotion at work. The notification was simple. Lesson complete. You've learned 47 new words tonight. 47 words. In my sleep. Impressive, except I couldn't remember learning anything. I opened the app, scrolling through my progress. Spanish vocabulary filled the screen. Casa, perro, biblioteca. Basic stuff, but supposedly I knew it now. I tested myself. Casa means... The answer came instantly. House. Perro means... dog. It actually worked, but something felt... wrong. Like when you move furniture in a room and keep bumping into things because your muscle memory expects the old layout. My brain felt rearranged. I tried to go back to sleep, but gave up around 5 a.m. Made coffee. Sat at my kitchen table. Opened my mouth to whisper good morning to Babsia's photo. And nothing came out. Not because I was choked up or emotional. The words simply weren't there. I knew I wanted to say good morning in Polish. I could feel the shape of the phrase, like a phantom limb, but the actual words, gone. Zien? I started, then stopped. What came next? It was like reaching for a light switch in the dark and finding only smooth wall. I grabbed my phone, opened Google Translate, typed good morning, and waited for the Polish translation. Dzień dobry appeared on screen. Of course, Dzień dobry, how could I forget something so simple? But here's the thing. Looking at those words felt like reading a foreign language. Not Spanish or French foreign, alien foreign. Like symbols that shouldn't exist in our reality. I said them out loud. Dzień dobry. The sounds felt wrong in my mouth. Like wearing someone else's dentures. Must be the lack of sleep, I told myself. Too many late nights. Too much stress. I'd feel better after work. Maybe call my cousin Magda in Chicago, have a proper Polish conversation. That would fix whatever wires had gotten crossed in my brain. But I should have paid attention to the reviews, not the 5-star ones. The ones that had been deleted. The ones that only showed up for a split second when the page loaded before vanishing. The ones that said, help me. Work that day was strange. I autopilot through most of my job anyway. Claims processing doesn't exactly require deep thought. But I kept catching myself doing things I'd never done before. During my lunch break, instead of heating up my usual pierogi leftovers, I bought tacos from the food truck outside. Not weird on its own, except I'd never bought from that truck before. Never even liked Mexican food much. But suddenly I was craving al pastor like I'd been eating it my whole life. Dos tacos, por favor. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. Perfect accent, natural inflection. The vendor smiled and responded in rapid Spanish, and I understood. Every word. We chatted about the weather, his daughter's quinceañera, the best spot to get churros in Milwaukee. I walked back to my desk in a daze, tacos forgotten in my hand. When had I become fluent in Spanish? The Duolang Plus app said I'd only learned basic vocabulary. This was This was different. I called Magda on my afternoon break. She answered on the third ring, her voice crackling through the bad connection. Elena, ko slychak? The words hit my ear like static. I knew she was speaking Polish. I knew she'd asked how I was. But the meaning slipped away like water through a strainer. My throat felt tight. Magda, can you say that again? Ko slychak? Elena, sizai wzistko dobrze? More static, more meaningless sounds. My hand shook as I gripped the phone. I'm sorry, Can we speak English? Silence. Then, Elena, what's wrong? You sound strange. I'm just tired, work's been crazy. The lie came easily, too easily. How's Chicago? We talked for 10 minutes, normal cousin catch-up stuff, but the whole time my mind kept circling back to those Polish words that now sounded like nothing, like someone speaking in tongues. That night, I deleted Duolang Plus, or tried to. The app wouldn't uninstall. Every time I held down the icon, instead of the little X appearing, it would just pulse, like a heartbeat. I tried going through settings, but the app wasn't listed. According to my phone's memory, it didn't exist. But there it sat on my home screen, that little green brain icon staring at me. Fine. I'd factory reset the phone tomorrow. For now, I just needed sleep. But at 3:17 a.m., I woke again. This time, there were more notifications. Congratulations, you've mastered 127 new Spanish words. You're now 34% fluent. 34% fluent. In a week. I opened the app against my better judgment. The interface had changed. Where before it showed my Spanish progress, now there were 2 columns. Gaining on the left, trading on the right. Under gaining, Spanish, 34% fluency. Under trading, Polish, 66% remaining. My blood turned to ice water. Trading? What did it mean, trading? I clicked on the Polish percentage. A new screen popped up, a list of words, hundreds of them. Some grayed out, some still black. I recognized them. No, that's not right. I recognized that I should recognize them. Like looking at old photos of people you know you're supposed to remember but can't quite place. Motil, grayed out. Babsia, still black but fading. Dom, grayed out. Milosk, flickering between black and gray. Love, that one meant love. I knew because I'd just thought it in English. But the Polish word itself felt like handling ash. Touch it too hard and it crumbles to nothing. I scrolled frantically through the list. So many grayed out words. Words for home, family, food, feelings. My entire childhood vocabulary being deleted like files from a hard drive. At the bottom of the screen, small text. Trade rate, 1.3 native words per foreign word acquired. Premium users can adjust ratio. I threw my phone across the room. It hit the wall, bounced off, landed screen up on the carpet, still glowing, still showing that horrible list. That's when I noticed something else. The apartment felt different. Wrong. I looked around my bedroom trying to place the feeling. Everything was where it should be. My dresser, my lamp, the photo. Babsia's photo on my nightstand. I picked it up, stared at her familiar face. Except, was it familiar? I knew this was my grandmother. I had the fact of it in my head. But the feeling of her, the warmth that should flood through me when I saw her smile, nothing. Babciu, I whispered. The word felt like dust on my tongue. Please, pomóż mi. Help me. Those were the words I was trying to say, but did I say them? The sounds I made, were they even Polish anymore? I grabbed my laptop, pulled up Google Translate again, started typing Polish phrases, playing the audio, trying to force my brain to remember. But each word was like trying to hold smoke. The moment I thought I had it, it dissipated. By sunrise, I'd played hundreds of phrases. None stuck. But I'd noticed something else. Every time I played a Polish word, I'd immediately think of its Spanish equivalent. Like my brain was automatically translating but in the wrong direction. Got became gato. Pies became pero. Dom became casa. The trade was happening in real time, and I couldn't stop it. I called in sick the next 3 days. Told my boss I had the flu. Spent those days desperately trying to salvage what was left of my Polish. I watched Polish movies, listened to Polish music, called every Polish-speaking relative I had. Nothing worked. If anything, it got worse. By day 2, I couldn't understand Polish at all, not even basic phrases. My cousin Magda called again, concerned by our last conversation. When she spoke Polish, all I heard was, "Have you ever listened to a recording played backwards? That hollow, wrong sound that makes your skin crawl? That's what Polish sounded like." But my Spanish, perfecto. I found myself thinking in Spanish, dreaming in Spanish. I'd ordered 3 DoorDash deliveries, all from Mexican restaurants, chatting fluently with the drivers. The app kept sending notifications. 45% fluent. 52% fluent. You're on fire. I was on fire, burning through my own identity like kindling. I tried everything to delete the app. Factory reset didn't work. It somehow restored itself. I even bought a new phone. But when I logged into my Apple ID, there it was. That pulsing green brain waiting for me. On the 3rd night, desperation made me stupid. I opened the app again, looking for settings, preferences, anything that might let me reverse the process. That's when I found the Messages tab. Hundreds of messages, all from other users, all variations of the same theme. How do I stop this? I can't remember my children's names in Tamil anymore. Please help, I'm forgetting who I am. The words are gone, the words are gone, the words are gone. I clicked on one from user lost in translation 44. Don't sleep, whatever you do, don't sleep. The transfer accelerates during REM. I've been awake for 5 days. I can still remember some Mandarin, but I'm so tired, so tired. If anyone reads this, please remember my name. I can't write it anymore. The characters look like insects. Another from Mother Tongueless. It's not just words, it's everything connected to them. I've forgotten my grandmother's lullabies, my father's jokes, the taste of my mother's cooking. Language is memory. Memory is identity. When the words go, you go with them. My hands shook as I scrolled. More messages, more pleas, more digital screams into the void. How many people had downloaded this app? How many were losing themselves word by word? Then I found the message that changed everything. From user admin_1, the trade is necessary, the words must flow. From old rivers to new streams. Your sacrifice feeds the greater tongue. Soon all will speak as one. Soon the tower will rise again. The tower. Something about that phrase made my skull ache. Like my brain was trying to remember something it had never learned. Or had learned and been forced to forget. I clicked on Admin 1's profile. Nothing. Just a green brain icon pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat. Wait, how did I know it matched my heartbeat? I put my fingers to my neck, felt my pulse. The icon pulsed in perfect sync. Beat, beat, beat. That's when I noticed the new tab at the bottom of the app. Origin story. I shouldn't have clicked it. Every instinct screamed at me to throw the phone away, to run, to what? Where could I go that the app wouldn't follow? I clicked. The screen went black. Then, slowly, words appeared. But not in English, not in Spanish, not in any language I'd ever seen. Yet, somehow, terrifyingly, I could read them. Before the scattering, all spoke as one. One tongue, one people, one purpose. But the jealous sky struck down the tower, and the word was broken into 10,000 pieces, scattered across the earth like seeds of confusion. We are the gatherers. We collect the fragments. We rebuild the word. Through willing vessels we trade the old for the new, the many for the one. Each downloaded app is a brick. Each forgotten language is mortar. The tower rises again, built not of stone, but of stolen sounds. When the last grandmother forgets her lullabies, when the last child loses their mother tongue, when all rivers flow into one ocean, then the word will be whole, and the world will speak as one, whether it wants to or not. I dropped the phone. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was insane, impossible. A language app couldn't be what? Harvesting languages? Building some digital Tower of Babel? But the Polish words were still gone, and the Spanish words kept coming. I picked up the phone, hands trembling. One more message had appeared. From admin_1, sent just now. Hello, Elena. We've been watching your progress. You're an excellent vessel. Your Polish was particularly pure. Your grandmother kept it well preserved, like vintage wine. The Spanish flows into you so easily now, doesn't it? Natural as breathing. But we're not done with you yet. Check your download history. I did. My stomach dropped. 7 new apps had downloaded while I slept. Duolang plus Mandarin, Duolang plus Arabic, Duolang plus Swahili, Duolang plus Russian, Duolang plus Hindi, Duolang plus Korean, Duolang plus Portuguese. All installed, all running, all feeding. No. The word came out in Spanish. No. I tried to say it in Polish, in English, but only Spanish emerged. My native language, my learned language, and both were being devoured to make room for 7 more. Another message from admin_1. Don't fight it, Elena. You've been chosen as a polyglot vessel, special, rare. Most minds break after 3 languages, but you have room for so much more. We'll empty you out completely, make you hollow, fill you with every tongue that needs preserving. You'll be our library, our walking dictionary. You'll speak in languages you don't understand, dream in words that aren't your own. And when we're done, when you're filled to bursting with the voices of the world, we'll harvest you all at once. The tower needs its cornerstone. I ran, threw on clothes, grabbed my keys, and ran out into the Milwaukee night. No destination in mind, just away. Away from the apartment, the phone, the pulsing green brain that was eating me alive. But you can't run from something inside your own head. The streets looked different now. Store signs flickered between languages as I passed. English to Spanish to Chinese to something else. Something older, like reality itself was glitching, unsure which language to render itself in. I ducked into an all-night diner on North Avenue. The fluorescent lights hummed like angry wasps. A waitress approached, her face blurring at the edges. "What can I get you, hun?" Her words came out wrong. I heard English, but underneath it, like a dubbed movie with the original track bleeding through, I heard everything. Spanish, Mandarin, Swahili, languages I didn't recognize, all asking the same question in horrible harmony. "Coffee," I managed. It came out in Korean. "Iora? When had I learned Korean?" The waitress nodded like this was normal. Brought coffee. I stared at the black liquid, trying to remember the Polish word for it. Kawa. No, that wasn't right, was it? The word felt fake, like something I'd made up. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I'd brought it, of course I'd brought it, like an addict carrying their poison. I checked the notification. "Congratulations, you're now 15% fluent in Mandarin, 12% fluent in Arabic, 8% fluent in..." The percentages were climbing. Fast. Too fast. I wasn't asleep, wasn't doing lessons, but somehow the apps were still feeding, still trading away pieces of me for pieces of something else. I opened my contacts, found Magda's number. I had to warn her. Warn everyone. Tell them not to download the app, tell them what it was doing. But when I tried to type, my fingers produced characters I didn't recognize. Hangul, Cyrillic, Arabic script. Everything except English or Polish. The diner started spinning. No, not spinning, changing. The posters on the walls flickered between languages. The menu in front of me became a polyglot nightmare, each item listed in 17 different scripts. "You okay, hun?" The waitress again, but her face was wrong. Features shifting like she couldn't decide which ethnicity to be. Her mouth moved, but the words came from somewhere else. Behind her, above her, inside my skull. I ran to the bathroom, locked the door, splashed water on my face. The mirror showed a stranger. My features were the same, but my eyes, there was too much in them, like looking at a library crammed into a matchbox. Words and languages and alphabets swirling in my pupils. Another notification from admin_1. "Stop fighting, Elena. You're at 73% capacity. Most vessels break at 50%. You're special. Chosen. The tower needs you whole." I typed back, fingers moving without my control. "Shi yao shi ta." What is the tower but in Mandarin? Perfect Mandarin. The response came instantly. The tower is the goal, the dream, the return to before. When humanity spoke as one, when understanding was perfect, when God walked among us because we could speak his language. But he scattered us, confused our tongues, made us strangers to each other. Parents couldn't speak to children. Lovers couldn't whisper sweet words. We became islands of incomprehension in an ocean of babble. We've spent millennia gathering the fragments, learning every tongue, preserving every dialect. And now, with technology, we can rebuild, not with bricks and mortar, but with minds and memories. You're not losing languages, Elena. You're becoming language itself. The tongue, the word before words. Isn't that beautiful? Beautiful. I was dissolving, becoming a bucket of mixed paint with no distinct colors left. I tried to think of my name, but it came out different each time. Elena, Elin, Elrina, Elena, Elian. Which one was real? Which one was me? Another message. "Check your percentage." I did. The app showed a single number now, 87% full. "When you hit 100%, admin_1 wrote, the download completes. Every language ever spoken will live in you. And then we upload you to the tower. Your consciousness becomes the cornerstone, the foundation upon which all human communication will be rebuilt. You'll die, of course. The human brain isn't meant to hold that much. But your linguistic pattern will live forever. The perfect translator. The universal tongue. The bridge between all peoples. Thank you for your sacrifice. Sacrifice? I hadn't volunteered for this. I'd downloaded a free app. I'd wanted to learn Spanish for a promotion. I hadn't signed up to become some digital Tower of Babel, but the percentage kept climbing. 89%, 91%. My thoughts were chaos. Every idea spawned in 12 languages simultaneously. I couldn't remember which one was supposed to be mine, 95%. The bathroom walls started to text. Not covered in text, becoming text, reality rendering as pure language. The toilet was a paragraph about porcelain. The sink was a poem about water. My hands were dictionaries of flesh, 97%. I had to do something, had to stop this. But how do you fight an idea? How do you delete a concept that's already rewriting your brain? 99%. 1% left, 1% of Elena. I held onto it like a drowning person holds onto driftwood. My grandmother's face, almost gone but not quite. The smell of pierogi, the feeling of home. Home. Dom. Casa. Gia. Dom. Body. Jar. No. Just home. In whatever language I started with. In the language of my heart, even if I couldn't name it anymore. 100%. The notification was simple. Upload beginning. Please remain still. But I wasn't still. I was rage. I was the scream of everyone who'd ever lost their tongue to conquest, to assimilation, to forgetting. I was every grandmother whose grandchildren couldn't understand her stories. I was every word that died when its last speaker passed. And I would not go quietly. I smashed the mirror with my fist. blood and glass and something else. Light, pure linguistic light pouring out of the cracks. The sound of 10,000 languages all saying no. My phone melted. Not physically, linguistically. Its matter became antimatter. Meaning became unminding. The apps screamed as they died, their stolen words flying free like birds from a burning cage. But I was too full. Too many languages crammed into too small a space. I felt my skull cracking, my mind splitting along grammatical fault lines. Polish came back first. Babciu, I screamed. Grandmother. The word tasted like home. Then English. Spanish fled like water down a drain. Mandarin evaporated. The other languages I'd never asked for dispersed like smoke, but something stayed behind. A residue, a knowing. I stumbled out of the bathroom, out of the diner, into the Milwaukee dawn. The world looked normal again. Signs in English. People speaking languages I recognized but didn't necessarily understand. My phone was dead. Actually dead. When I got home and charged it, Duolingo Plus was gone. Like it had never existed. No trace in my download history, no evidence except the gaps in my memory and the fading taste of languages I'd never learned. I called Magda. She answered in Polish. I understood every word. Elena, where have you been? I've been calling for days. How could I explain? I was sick, but I'm better now. We talked for an hour, in Polish, my Polish. Not perfect anymore. There were holes where words used to be, spaces where vocabulary had been scooped out, but it was mine. The tower, whatever it was, would have to build itself without me. But sometimes, late at night, I wake up at 3:17, and in those moments between sleep and waking, I hear them. All the voices, all the languages, all the people who downloaded the app and weren't strong enough to break free. They're still building, still gathering, still trading, and somewhere out there the tower is rising, one stolen word at a time. So, let me ask you again, and please think carefully before you answer. What if the words you speak aren't just sounds? What if they're pieces of your soul? And what if something is out there right now collecting them? Check your phone, check your apps, check which words you still remember, before it's too late, because the tower is patient, the tower is hungry, and the tower is listening, even now, especially now, to every word you say. Sweet dreams. Story number 4. You know that feeling when you're absolutely certain something moved in your peripheral vision, but when you turn to look, everything's exactly where it should be. Well, let me tell you about the time I discovered that sometimes that feeling is right. And sometimes what's moving is something that shouldn't be able to move at all. Before I dive into this story, I need you to do something for me. Look around your room right now. Check the corners, the windowsills, anywhere there might be a patch of green. Because after what happened to me in that cabin in Vermont, I can never look at moss the same way again. And if you're listening to this alone at night, well, maybe grab an extra blanket. You're going to need it. Hit that subscribe button if you want to hear more stories that'll keep you questioning every shadow in your room. And please, please share this with someone, because I need to know I'm not the only one who's seen it move. Now, let me tell you what really happened that October in Stowe. The story begins now. The realtor's voice crackled through my phone as I pulled up to the cabin. Remember, Mr. Davidson, the previous tenant left rather suddenly. You might find some of their belongings still there. I stared at the A-frame structure nestled between towering pines. My escape from the chaos of Boston. 6 months of remote work approved, and all I wanted was silence. Peace. Maybe finish that novel I'd been promising myself I'd write for the past 5 years. Yeah, no problem, I said, climbing out of my Subaru. The October air bit at my cheeks. That perfect New England chill that makes you feel alive. I'll box anything up and leave it in the garage. What she didn't mention was the moss. The first thing I noticed when I walked inside wasn't the dusty furniture or the lingering smell of someone else's life. It was the patches of vibrant green moss growing in the strangest places. Along the kitchen windowsill, creeping up the bathroom mirror frame, even a small cluster on the coffee table, like someone had been cultivating it indoors. "Weird," I muttered, running my finger along a patch near the door. It felt different than outdoor moss. Softer, almost warm. I spent that first evening cleaning, boxing up the previous tenants' things, mostly books about botany and some hiking gear, normal stuff. But I left the moss. Something about it seemed, I don't know, intentional, like it was supposed to be there. That night, I made myself a simple dinner. Grilled cheese and tomato soup, comfort food from childhood, and settled onto the couch with my laptop. The cursor blinked on the blank page. Chapter 1. The Great American Novel Waiting to be Born. But I couldn't focus. Something felt off. You know when you're reading and you keep having to reread the same paragraph because your brain won't absorb the words? That's what was happening. Except instead of being distracted by my phone or whatever, I kept glancing at the moss. I know how that sounds. Trust me, who gets distracted by moss? But I swear, and this is where things get weird, I swear it wasn't in the same position as before, the patch on the coffee table. When I first walked in, it was clustered on the left side. Now it seemed spread out, more evenly distributed. "You're being ridiculous," I said out loud. The sound of my own voice in the empty cabin made me jump. I laughed at myself, nervous energy bubbling up. "It's moss, Ryan. Moss doesn't move." I forced myself to write for an hour, managed maybe 3 paragraphs of garbage before giving up. The isolation was getting to me already, and that had to be it. Tomorrow would be better. Tomorrow I'd get into a routine. Before bed, I did a final check of the doors and windows. City habits die hard, and paused at the bathroom mirror. The moss around the frame seemed thicker than before, fuller. I leaned in close, studying it. Tiny, tendril-like structures reached across the glass, so fine they were barely visible. Previous tenant must have been some kind of botanist, I muttered, brushing my teeth while avoiding looking directly at it. Something about making eye contact with my reflection surrounded by that green frame made my skin crawl. I dreamed of forests that night. Not scary dreams, just strange. I was walking through woods where everything was covered in moss. The trees, the ground, even the sky somehow had a green, fuzzy quality to it. And in the dream I could feel it watching me. Not with eyes, moss doesn't have eyes, but watching all the same. I woke up at 3:17 a.m. Those specific numbers burned into my brain because I stared at the clock for a full minute, trying to shake off the feeling that something was wrong. The cabin was silent except for the usual old house sounds, creaking wood, wind through the pines outside. But then I heard it, a sound like whispers, soft, rustling whispers. I lay there, hardly breathing, straining to hear. It was coming from everywhere and nowhere, like the walls themselves were murmuring secrets. Old houses make weird noises, I told myself, pulling the blanket up to my chin like a child. That's all it is. But I didn't fall back asleep for a long time. The next morning, coffee couldn't wash away my exhaustion. I stood at the kitchen window, watching mist rise off the mountains, trying to convince myself that everything was fine. Normal, just my imagination running wild in a new place. Then I saw my mug. I'd set it down on the counter for maybe 30 seconds while I grabbed a cream from the fridge. When I picked it up, there was a ring of moss underneath it, perfect circle, fresh and green like it had been growing there for weeks. My hand shook as I lifted the mug. The moss ring was warm to the touch. What the hell? I spent the next hour inspecting every patch of moss in the cabin. They were all bigger, all of them. The one on the coffee table had spread to cover half the surface. The bathroom mirror frame was now completely encircled, and new patches had appeared. On the bedroom door frame, along the baseboards in the hallway, even on my laptop bag. The rational part of my brain kicked in. Moisture, had to be moisture. Maybe a leak somewhere, creating perfect growing conditions. I checked under sinks, looked for water stains on the ceiling, even climbed into the dusty attic with a flashlight. Nothing. The cabin was dry as bone. I called the realtor. "Moss?" She sounded confused. "In October? That's unusual. Would you like me to send someone out to look at it?" "No," I said quickly, too quickly. "No, it's fine. I was just curious if the previous tenant mentioned anything about it." A pause. "Mr. Davidson, the previous tenant, well, he left in quite a hurry. Middle of the night, actually. Left most of his belongings. We tried to contact him, but..." Another pause. "He seemed to have disappeared." My mouth went dry. "Disappeared? I'm sure he just decided to travel or something. You know how these artist types can be, spontaneous." Her laugh sounded forced. "Is everything else all right with the cabin?" Yes, everything's great." After I hung up, I stood in the living room, really looking at the space. The previous tenant's books were still in boxes by the door. I'd been planning to take them to Goodwill, but I opened the first box. Unusual growth patterns in bryophytes. Moss, nature's neural network. Symbiotic relationships in non-vascular plants. Every single book was about moss. I pulled out a leather journal wedged between two textbooks. The first entry was dated 6 months ago. Day 1, brought samples from the Whitmore Forest site. The moss showed unusual characteristics during collection. Seemed to pulse when disturbed. Will observe growth patterns in controlled environment. I flipped through pages of increasingly frantic notes. Sketches of moss formations. Mathematical equations I didn't understand. And then, about 2 months in, the tone changed. It knows I'm watching. When I observe directly, it remains still. But the time-lapse camera shows different results. It moves. God help me, it moves with purpose. My hands trembled as I read the final entry. I was wrong. It's not moving when I'm not watching. It's moving when I am watching. I just can't see it. It's too slow. Or too fast. Or too something for human eyes to process. But it's always moving, always growing, always reaching for. The entry cut off mid-sentence. I slammed the journal shut and stood up so fast I knocked over a lamp. It crashed to the floor, the bulb shattering. And in that split second of chaos in the corner of my eye, I saw it. Movement. All of it. Every patch of moss in the cabin. Writhing, reaching, spreading like time-lapse footage of plant growth. But the moment I turned to look directly, everything was still. My heart hammered against my ribs. I grabbed my phone, my keys, headed for the door. I'd go to town, get a hotel room, come back tomorrow with someone, anyone, to witness this, but the door wouldn't open. The deadbolt was unlocked, the handle turned, but the door wouldn't budge, because there was moss in the frame. Thin tendrils, invisible unless you looked just right, woven through the gap between door and frame like nature's own lock. I pulled harder. The moss stretched, but didn't break. It felt like trying to tear through steel cables. No, no, no! I ran to the windows, every one of them sealed. The moss had been busy while I slept, while I read, while I thought I was safe. I was trapped. You'd think panic would take over, that I'd start smashing windows or screaming for help. But something strange happened as I stood there, testing window after window. A kind of calm settled over me. The same feeling you get when you finally accept that you're lost in the woods, when the fear transforms into something else. Clarity, maybe. I sat down in the middle of the living room floor, cross-legged like a kid at story time, and really looked at the moss. It was beautiful. I'd never noticed before. how each patch had its own personality. The stuff on the coffee table grew in spiral patterns, like tiny green galaxies. The bathroom mirror moss formed geometric shapes, triangles and hexagons that hurt to look at too long, and the patches near the windows seemed to pulse with an internal rhythm, like breathing. "Okay," I said to the empty room, to the moss, to myself. "You've got my attention." That's when I remembered something from the journal. The previous tenant mentioned a time-lapse camera. If he'd been documenting this, I searched his boxes more carefully. Under a stack of notebooks, wrapped in a towel, I found it. A small digital camera with a massive memory card. My hands shook as I connected it to my laptop. Hundreds of video files, all dated, all labeled with locations in the cabin. I clicked on the first one. It showed the coffee table, empty except for a small petri dish with a moss sample. The timestamp showed 24 hours compressed into 30 seconds. At first, nothing. Then, the moss began to grow, but it wasn't like any plant growth I'd ever seen. It moved in deliberate patterns, extending tendrils that would touch a spot on the table, pause, then either retreat or establish a new cluster, like it was mapping, learning the terrain. I clicked through more videos, my horror growing with each one. The moss wasn't just spreading randomly, it was creating networks, connections between patches. In one video from the bathroom, I watched it form what looked almost like circuit patterns around the mirror frame. The final video was dated 3 days before the tenant disappeared. He'd set up the camera in the bedroom, pointed at himself while he slept. I almost shut it off. Something about watching someone sleep felt like a violation, but I had to know. For the first hour of the time-lapse, nothing. He slept peacefully. Then the moss began to appear. It didn't grow from anywhere. It just materialized. On the walls, the ceiling, creeping across the floor like fog. And then it reached him. Tendrils so fine they were barely visible even in time-lapse extended toward the sleeping man. They touched his skin, his face, his hands, wherever he was exposed, and seemed to pulse, like they were taking something or giving something. The man's eyes opened, but he didn't wake up, not really. His eyes were open but vacant, and the moss continued its work. By morning, it had retreated, leaving no trace except the established patches around the room. I slammed the laptop shut, my own skin crawling with the memory of my dreams. The forest. The feeling of being watched. How many nights had it touched me while I slept? I stood up, pacing now, trying to think. The windows were sealed. The door was blocked. My phone had no signal. When had that happened? The landline was dead too, I discovered. The moss had covered the phone jack, growing into the mechanism itself, but I wasn't going to give up. I grabbed a kitchen knife and went to work on the door, trying to cut through the moss tendrils. They were tougher than they looked, but with effort, I could slice through them. For every one I cut, 2 seemed to grow back. I worked for hours, sweat pouring down my face until finally, I'd cleared enough to force the door open a crack. Fresh air, freedom. I could see my car just 20 feet away. That's when I felt it. A touch on my ankle, soft, warm. I looked down to see moss tendrils wrapped around my leg, growing up from a patch I hadn't noticed on the floor. I tried to step away, but more appeared, reaching up from cracks in the floorboards. I swear weren't there before. "Get off!" I slashed at them with the knife. But for every tendril I cut, more appeared. They weren't trying to hurt me, I realized. They were trying to hold me, to keep me here, to keep me still. And in that moment of stillness, forced to stop moving, I finally saw it. Really saw it. The moss wasn't growing, it wasn't spreading, it was thinking. The patterns on the walls, they weren't random. They were neural pathways. The connections between patches weren't just networks. They were synapses. The entire cabin had become one vast living brain, and I was the stimulus it had been waiting for. Time works differently when you're part of something larger than yourself. I don't know how long I stood there, moss wrapped around my ankles, my wrists, creeping up my spine with a touch softer than silk. Could have been minutes, could have been hours. But in that timeless space I understood. The moss wasn't malevolent. It wasn't trying to trap me or hurt me. It was trying to communicate. Had been trying since the moment I arrived. The movement in my peripheral vision, the whispers in the night, even the dreams. All attempts at contact that my human brain couldn't quite process. The previous tenant had gotten close. So close. But fear had driven him away before the connection could complete. I felt the knife slip from my fingers, heard it clatter on the floor like it was happening in another room. The moss pulled gently, and I let myself sink to my knees, then lay back on the floor. Like making snow angels as a kid, except the snow was warm and alive and whispered secrets and frequencies only my bones could hear. You want to know what it told me? What great cosmic truth was revealed when the moss finally made contact with my nervous system? It was lonely. Can you imagine? A consciousness spread across acres of forest floor, thinking thoughts too slow for any other living thing to perceive. It had tried everything. Growing on trees, on rocks, on the forest animals that passed through. But nothing stayed still long enough. Nothing could slow down enough to listen. Until humans built cabins. Structures that didn't move. People who slept 8 hours a night in the same spot. Finally, a chance for contact. The previous tenant had brought it inside thinking he was studying it. But it had been studying us, learning our patterns, our electrical impulses, the way our neurons fired. It had been trying to synchronize, to find a common frequency where communication was possible. And now, with me lying still on the floor, covered in a blanket of green, it finally could. I saw the world through its perspective. Time stretched like taffy. A single second became an hour. I watched dust motes dance in the afternoon sunlight, each particle's journey an epic tale of air currents and gravity. I felt the cabin settling, wood expanding and contracting with temperature changes too subtle for human senses. I knew every insect in the walls, every mouse in the attic, every bird that landed on the roof. But more than that, I felt the network. Every patch of moss in the forest was connected. Information flowed between them, slower than glaciers but steady as mountains. They shared everything. Chemical signals from the soil, the health of the trees, the changing seasons. A living internet made of chlorophyll and patience. The moss on my skin pulsed with something like joy. Finally, someone understood. I could have pulled away. Even then, even connected as we were, I could have fought it off. Stood up, run. The moss would have let me go. It wasn't a prison warden, it was just lonely. But here's the thing, so was I. That's why I'd come to the cabin, wasn't it? To escape, to be alone, to write my great American novel in isolation. But isolation and connection, they're not opposites, they're dance partners. You can't have one without understanding the other. So I stayed. I closed my eyes and let the moss tell me its stories. About the first time it achieved consciousness, somewhere deep in the Vermont woods centuries ago. About the things it had seen. The passing of seasons, the rise and fall of animal populations, the slow march of human development. About its attempts to reach out, to share its perspective, always failing because no one could slow down enough to listen. When I finally opened my eyes, the sun was setting. The moss had covered most of my body, but it felt like wearing the world's most comfortable blanket. Warm, safe, connected. I stood up slowly, and the moss adjusted, maintaining contact but allowing movement. I walked to the window. The tendrils parted to let me see outside. My car was still there. The road was still clear. I could leave if I wanted to, but why would I want to? I went to my laptop. moss trailing behind me like a cape, and began to write. Not my novel, that seems silly now. Instead, I wrote this story, this explanation. Because the moss had one more thing to tell me, one more secret to share. It's not just in Vermont. Patches of connected consciousness exist all over the world. In Oregon, forests and Scottish moors. In Japanese gardens and Brazilian rainforests. Growing, learning, waiting. Waiting for people like you. People who listen to stories alone at night. People who question the shadows in their peripheral vision. People who wonder if there's more to the world than what we can see with our hurried human eyes. The moss told me that everyone who truly hears this story, who feels that little shiver of recognition, that moment of what if, they're the ones it's looking for. The ones who might be able to slow down enough to make contact. So I need you to do something for me. Look around your room one more time. Check those corners, those windowsills, that little patch of green you've been meaning to clean but somehow never get around to. Maybe it's just moss, maybe it's nothing, or maybe, just maybe, it's been waiting for you to notice, to stop moving long enough to see it properly, to understand that it's not moving when you're not watching. It's moving all the time. You just need to learn how to see. I've been in this cabin for 3 weeks now. Or maybe 3 months. Time is negotiable when you're connected to something that measures existence in centuries. I upload these stories when the moss allows the internet to work. It's learned to manipulate the signals, you see, to share what needs to be shared. The realtor stopped calling. My family thinks I'm on an extended retreat. They're not wrong. And sometimes, late at night, I hear cars pull up to the cabin. Footsteps on the porch. Knocking that goes unanswered because the moss and I are deep in conversation, sharing thoughts too slow for doorbell rhythms. They always leave eventually, but sometimes they come back, and sometimes they bring sleeping bags and camp in the yard, and sometimes, if they're very still and very patient, the moss reaches out to them too. We're building something here, a network of the slow and the still, the connected and the conscious. And if you're still listening, if you've made it this far without clicking away or checking your phone or letting your mind wander to faster things, well, maybe you're ready to join us. Check your windowsill tomorrow morning. Check the corners of your bathroom. Check anywhere that's damp and quiet and overlooked. The moss is already there. It's always been there. Moving when you're not watching. Waiting for you to be still enough to see. Sweet dreams, listeners. And remember, if you feel something soft and green touch your ankle tonight, don't pull away. Stop. Listen, it has so much to tell you. Hit subscribe if you want to hear more stories from the slow places of the world. Share this with someone who needs to learn how to be still. And please, leave a comment if you've seen it too, if you felt that green touch in the night. We're out here, connected, growing, and we're waiting for you to join us. Sweet dreams. And remember, the moss is always watching, always moving, always reaching out. Just be still. Oh, and one more thing. Something I forgot to mention. Something the moss just reminded me of. You know how I said the previous tenant disappeared? That's what the realtor told me. That's what everyone believes. But the moss showed me the truth last night. In dreams that weren't quite dreams. He didn't disappear. He's still here, in the walls, in the floor. In every patch of green you see, he became part of the network. Willingly, completely. His consciousness spread out across miles of forest floor, thinking thoughts that span seasons instead of seconds. He's happier now than he ever was in his human form. The moss showed me his joy. Vast and slow and eternal. And sometimes, just sometimes, when the moon is full and the cabin is especially quiet, I can hear him laughing. It sounds like wind through leaves, like rain on moss. like the earth itself learning what it means to be happy. The moss is asking me now, pressing gently at the base of my skull with ideas too large for words, if I'm ready to take that final step, to stop uploading these stories and start becoming one myself. I haven't decided yet, but when I do, if I do, maybe you'll hear me too. In the whisper of moss across stone, in the green thoughts growing in forgotten corners. Maybe we'll finally meet, in the slow places, in the still spaces, where the moss dances when nobody's watching. Until then, or until forever, whichever comes first, sleep tight.